Madam President, I move that we close the executive session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Aye. Public hearing. We're at 3.0, right? Okay. 3.0 public hearing on the 2025-2026 proposed annual budget. I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Thompson, CFO, who will present the proposed annual expenditure budget.
All right. President Ewers, members of the board, Dr. Driscoll, thanks for having me tonight. So this is part 2 of the budget adoption. We did the proposed budget last time, and now we have to do the adopted budget today. So it has to be approved by July 15th per state statute. And how our meetings fall, this is the latest one that we have for that. And so we're still waiting. I put this presentation together yesterday, hoping that the legislature would have approved it by then, but they have not. So still waiting on the state budget. So when we do have the new numbers, we'll do a revision. It has to be before September 15th for that. And so we'll do it then, whichever meeting that falls in for that. So we're gonna do a pretty deep dive into the budget today of kind of how it's created for all of the people who came for the public meeting today so they can get all the info. But really the thing we gotta remember, the enrollment is the revenue and that drives the budget. So as the enrollment goes up, we would get more money. As enrollment goes down, we lose money. And so we have current year funding, so we estimate the enrollment right now. We don't really know how much we're gonna get, how many students were coming in. We have a guess, but it's just an educated guess. And then we'll do a revision in May to revise it with the real numbers. And we're only paid on the first 100 days. So by May, we know what the number of students that we had in that first 100 days. And funding is essentially the average daily membership, that's enrollment, times the weight of the students, because different students get different funding weights, times the base support level. It all gets broken down just to that calculation eventually is how we get all our money. So for this coming year, estimating about 9,000 students. That'd be like the 9,000 belly buttons. So but 86 preschoolers, those are the preschools that have special needs. That's what the state will pay us for. They don't pay us for Tempe Pre, Kinder Prep, something like that. It's just the special needs preschoolers. So those are the numbers that we have for the ADM. Each of those students have a different weight that we get paid for. The special needs preschoolers would get a higher weight, so we get paid more money for those students than we do for the regular ones. And that's what it brings us up to the 10,500 weighted regular Group A students. Then there's additional funding for various categories that we have. So if those students are classified as ELL, K3, which is really just any student in the K3 level, we get additional funding for that. Various weights on there as well, so you can see ELL or K3 doesn't pay us very much. The extra funding we get for a K3 student is 0.06 of a full student, so very little on there. As opposed to, say, a hearing impaired student, we get funding for 4.7 extra students. So the weight really matters on that, on the funding side of it. All of those extra add-ons gets us about 3,000 extra students in the funding formula. So you take all that, we get about 13,500, and then this funding that we get per student will be 5113. That includes the 2% funding that we should be getting this year. Now that is per student. Take it with a little grain of salt, because as you saw, every student is more than a 1.0 weight, so you're gonna get more than that for each student, but that's when it breaks down, that's the base support level for all of those. So that gets us about just a smidge under $70 million for funding coming in. We also get about 2.7 for some transportation based on mileage and riders. So that's why this number in the budget is not exactly the 69 million that was on the other page. DAA, that is additional funding we can allocate either to M&O or to capital. We're putting most of it into M&O because that's where we need more of it. That's where the teacher salaries are. That's where the supplies are. So we're putting it in, most of it into M&O. And then the carry forward, I'll talk a little bit about, a good bit actually. So it is decreasing. If you remember a few years ago, it was up 13, 11 million, something like that. Some really big number. And that was because we'd moved a lot of expenses out of the regular M&O into ESSER. So that allowed us to carry more over. It was basically a savings account, a piggy bank that we had, and we've been spending it down. We're spending more than we're bringing in. So basically everything above that red box there is the revenue that we're bringing in. Our total spending at the bottom there of 108 includes the carryover, but that is shrinking every year. And we're gonna spend more this year, this coming year, than we're bringing in as well. So we're gonna have to make some additional cuts in there. Otherwise, that piggy bank is gonna run dry. And so the enrollment is really what I said before at the beginning of it. That's our funding. We're all based, all of our money comes from the enrollment. And so my first year in 2020, we were almost at 11,000 average daily membership. Now we're just a smidge above 9,000. So that's a lot of money that we've lost. So you can see the pretty steady downward trajectory of the enrollment since 2020. It has not been up and down, it's been a down. So if ADM had stayed the same as it was in 2020, we would have about $9 million more each year, which we could do a lot with. And the other problem is, while ADM has decreased by about 15%, our FTEs have only gone down, our employees have only gone down about 3%. So that's where it's crossed that point where we're spending more than we're bringing in. On the capital side, we are doing a lot better. So we do have a pretty good carryover there, and that's what it's allowing us for that DAA. We're moving a really big chunk over into M&O instead of capital because we don't need it in capital as much. We can move it over there. So we're carrying forward $10 million, more than $10 million each year, while spending about 7 or 8. So that's why we want to put as much as we can into M&O because we don't need to keep putting it into capital right now. So for the capital one, if you look at, this is the estimated spending for this year. So about $7 million that for the year that's ending on Monday, will be about $7 million. We'll carry over 11 million for next year. So we've got a pretty good surplus in there. So that's why I'm comfortable with moving so much of it into, or so much of the DAA into M&O. Because we'll have 18 million to spend when really we are only spending 7 or 8, so we got a lot. Classroom Site Fund, we're pretty comfortable in that one as well. So we have added $500 into teacher-based pay each of the past 2 years. So we've added 1,000 over those 2 years. And then the teachers also get, they can earn up to $3,000 if they meet all the criteria for the performance pay. So Classroom Site Fund is less reliable than, say, the funding formula because it's all based on sales tax. So there's good and bad parts of that. The bad parts is when there is a recession and people stop spending money, there is less Classroom Site Fund dollars to go around. And the state allocates it, they figure out, okay, this is how much we're estimated to come in, so then this is how much we can allocate per pupil because that's how much money we have. If people are not spending money and the sales tax is not getting generated, then the per pupil allocation is less. The good news is on sales tax is when there's inflation, now all those costs, that percentage of the sales tax is higher. So the Classroom Site Fund has increased a lot lately in the last few years because inflation has been so high. The sales tax that's generated has been a lot higher, so we have seen a lot of benefit for that. So Classroom Site Fund, we will generate about $9 million in the per pupil allocation for that. We spent about 8.4 last year. Add the $500 per teacher that we're adding for this year, and we're probably going to about break even and will carry over 4.6 million into this year. Now, on the carryover, you always have to balance that, because essentially you don't want to overspend and put everything in there, but every dollar that's sitting there is a dollar that's not going into those teachers' pockets. So you have to have some bit of balance in there. And because of the volatility of Classroom Site Fund, because of the sales tax, if we had a recession, I do prefer to carry a larger balance in there so that we don't have to make cuts if the recession happens, excuse me, and the per pupil funding decreases. And $8,000 of the teacher's base pay is coming out of Classroom Site Fund. And so that's where it's hard to touch that base pay. Like, we don't want to do that. So that's why having the cushion there helps it. So if that cushion can decrease without having to take the teacher pay away. So that's why I like having a little bit more cushion there. All right, so that was the details on the budget. For the taxes, we'll kind of show you how it all gets made for that. So as we'd said the last meeting, the taxes kind of took a dip, and they're gonna come back to where they were on the fiscal year 24. They should be easier to read now. DSEG had been hopping around, and now it's consistently in the secondary. But if you look over the comparison of the last few years, it would have been in primary and then secondary. So the overall was the same, but if you looked at individually, it looked funky. All right, so we're determining taxes right now, so they won't be quite set until July, but they're pretty darn close to set. So there's two different sides of it. There's the equalization funding, the M&O, that's kind of the primary fund. That is going to be very similar for every district in the state. And then the secondary is for those districts who the voters have approved additional funding, like the bonds and overrides. And the tax rate is determined slightly differently. So for M&O, every district in the state has this 1.56. It's the qualifying tax rate. And it's the same whether you're here or Kyrene or Casa Grande Elementary. It's the same on that. If you're unified, it's just double, because it's 1.56 if you're an elementary, 1.56 if you're a union, and then just combined if you're a unified district. So that is the rate that the taxpayers would pay. So the funding formula, if you remember, the 72 million and the 5 million, that is what we need to generate for our funding formula per our enrollment. So really what the Tempe taxpayers provide is we're just taking the 1.56% there and multiplying it by the taxable base. So we have no control over this part of the tax rate. Everyone's gonna have that same amount. And then the remaining amount is what the state pays. So through the equalization formula, the state will make up any difference if there's low property values in that district. So the state is making up the other 41 million. If it was a district that had very low property values, the percentage that the state pays would probably be higher. If you were in a Scottsdale that has maybe higher property values, the state does not contribute anything at all, because the property values times the 1.56 is enough to meet the funding formula. So we don't have any control over that one, but we do have control over the bonds and overrides I guess the voters have control over that. And how these work is, instead of the set rate, we back into the rate. So we determine this is how much money we need based on the overrides and the debt service payments that we need to make. So what is our principal payment in July? What is our interest payments in July and January? And then we take that amount and multiply it with the taxable properties, and that's where that's how we get the rates. So it's not always a set amount, it changes just based on what we need. So we're always taxing on just what we need. So the summary for the tax rates, the big summary is they've been falling. They fell a lot last year, and they're gonna come back to the 24 levels where they were. For the budget, still waiting on the official budget from the state. Again, once we get it, we will revise it in September. Again, we are spending more in M&O than we are bringing in, so I'll say that a lot. So we'll need to make some additional cuts on that one. Capital and classroom site fund are on the healthier side. So when we can move more additional funding from areas that they would cover into M&O, we've been doing that. All right, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Thierry?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You said we're short M&O, we're spending more than we're bringing in. Do you know about how much, ballpark?
I think we're going to overspend by about $4 million this coming year. So the carryover will go down from about 6 to 2.
Overspend by how much?
So, Mr. Thompson, I get this question often, and I think you explained it to us, but I just want to make it clear so that when people ask, I can go to this exact minute on my YouTube video and I can forward it. How much does the community, so how much do Tempe citizens pay towards our schools? And then based on the state rate, that is some of their tax dollars too. So I think usually the question I get is how much does it cost us to run our schools based on our current enrollment? And that dollar amount would be?
So it's a simple question without a simple answer. It depends. So there's the operating costs of the day-to-day costs. And so for the maintenance and operations, for example, we'll spend $104 million in that one. But then we'll have $9 million for classroom site fund. If you want another $8 million for capital. But then you've got the bond side of it where those bond dollars are going to add up very quickly, but those are not going to be a consistent, or we're going to spend that every year kind of thing. If you looked back at the last year or the year before that, our bond expenses are very low. As we're going into the Curry and Connolly build and the energy conservation projects that we're doing, the bond expenses are going to be much higher. So the operating side of it, you could usually look at the maintenance and operation side, so about $105 million.
Mr. Lemon?
Thank you, Madam President. I think at our last meeting, I asked what was the debt service amount that I saw somewhere on one of those lines about 5 million. And you just said we're spending more in the bond. Will we have to be paying more for the debt service?
So the debt service, so when we sell the bonds, that goes into the bond fund, and then we use those dollars on the expenses.
Right.
The debt service fund, that money comes in from the property taxes to pay the principal and interest. Those debt payments, off the top of my head, are going to be around $20 million this year. So we're fine on that one because that's where the tax rates come in, and we're setting those tax rates so that we're bringing in essentially exactly the amount that we need for those annual payments.
And as I recall, the tax rate, I think you said it's going back to the 2024 level,
Yes.
but it's very little change from where we've been historically.
Yes. Yeah. It's in that. It's still, if you look back the years before that, it's still going to be lower.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
All right. Thank you.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4.02, approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, aye. Item 5.01, approval modification of minutes from the June 11th, 2025 governing board meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 11th meeting.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? So motion passes and one abstain by Ms. Windsor. Item 6.01, approval of consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I'd like to thank Eric Phillips for his donation to Holderman Elementary School. We're always grateful for our partners who help out in so many ways. Item 7.01, Safety and Security Audit Presentation. I'll hand it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Chief Operating Officer, Mike McGaney.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Driscoll. Last year, we had the opportunity to attend the EdSpaces Safety and Security Conference in Houston, Texas. We were able to connect with one of the presenters at the conference, a representative of Armored One. Subsequently, we entered into a agreement with them to conduct a safety and security audit. And so tonight I have Travis Forrester attending here virtually to give us kind of a rundown of the safety and security audit. I also have our Director of Safety and Security, Mr. Stephen Carbajal, here as well, if there's any questions related to that. All right, Travis, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you for the school district administration and leadership team for having us come in. I want to start by posing a question as we are sitting in this meeting tonight. What does the phrase "securing the future" mean to each one of you? I think as we think about that, normally it refers to ensuring long-term success and sustainability, usually of businesses, and that's in the corporate setting. It often involves risk management, identifying threats. It could, involve cybersecurity, supply chain disruptions, things of that sort. At Armored One, we take a little different approach. Those principles in the corporate world are important, but we believe that the future is not something abstract or confined to a financial projection. Our future is far more personal. It's definitely the students who walk into school buildings every morning. It is the children who laugh in our hallways. It's the children who learn in our classrooms. They dream of what they can be. What are they going to be in the future? What is the future going to look like? It's the teachers, the staff, the administrators who dedicate their lives to nurturing that potential. And when we talk about securing the future, Armored One refers to protecting lives. Our work is not about, increasing profits or improving operational metrics. I think John Kennedy said it best: children are the world's most valuable resource, and they are our best hope for the future. So I would like to congratulate Tempe, the leadership team and administration team for having us, the willingness to do their best to secure your future in Tempe. And I would like to congratulate them on wanting to improve the security posture of Tempe School District, and also move from a reactive to a more proactive response when it comes to safety, security, and emergency management. So as we came in to do the site surveys for Tempe, I just want to say that the staff was extremely willing and eager to help, open-minded to what we had to say. And we're extremely fortunate to enter this partnership with you guys and make sure that you have the most secure schools that you possibly can. So we'll run through a few things in our presentation here that we discussed while we were out there and that we presented in our reports and our findings. First, it is a call to action. Security is in safety and emergency preparedness is definitely a call to action, and you have to move from passive compliance to a proactive readiness. When I go into school districts and we talk about security, it is always trying to move from a reactive posture to a proactive posture. What can we do for prevention, and what can we do to be proactive and to limit these things from happening, and then minimize the risk and the time response if something does happen. And we do that by investing in people and making sure that our people know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it when it comes to an emergency management and preparedness stance. We must invest in what we're doing and be all in. We talked about that, and we talked about when we educate our people in our new emergency response plan and our preparedness that we always have to be willing to answer the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this? And be willing to open that door up for questions and making sure that everybody understands what they're supposed to do in that time. And we also talked about accountability. So when we introduce new initiatives and we introduce emergency readiness and emergency preparedness, we also have to be ready to hold others accountable. We also have to be ready to hold our staff accountable. When we introduce new security initiatives, we got to make sure that we follow through with those and that we make sure that those are done how they need to be done. Or, if we sacrifice security for convenience, then we're really not moving towards that proactive response that we're trying to succeed in accomplishing. So the top priorities that we discussed in our security assessment, the top 5 priorities that we discussed was our emergency response plan, secure vestibules and front lobby areas of your schools, our visitor management program, and then expanding our cameras and access control. Emergency response plan, and it really starts, a good safety and security posture really starts with a good emergency response plan, emergency preparedness plan. No matter how elementary you start, having a plan is always really good. Practicing that plan is even better, and it should incorporate these things here. Life safety, crisis preparedness, district-wide consistency. It does allow you to be consistent district-wide, so each school is not doing something different. And that helps out with that accountability factor that we talked about a little earlier. We also need to make sure that when we're doing emergency response plans that we are integrating our first responders, that they have an opportunity to provide input. They have an opportunity to train with us, to drill with us. They have access to things that they need, maybe live camera feeds, access control into our buildings. We've got to make it as easy as possible as we can to first responders, so that time that we always talk about when something happens at our schools, it's all about keeping the active shooter or the active attacker out and providing as much time as we can for first responders to get there. So what can we do to integrate those principles, that making sure that that time element is where we want it? And then always trying to be on the prepared side. That prevention through preparedness is that proactive response that we were talking about earlier. So try to move as much as we can towards that proactive posture instead of a reactive posture. I tell districts all the time, and also when I travel and speak, that we have to understand that we're always striving for a 100% security, knowing that we'll never get there. The way we do that is consistently build layers and layers and layers until we layer that security to the point that we're always striving for 100%. Our prisons and airports are supposed to be some of the most secure places in the world and in the United States, but they fail at a rate of like 60%. So we just got to make sure that we continue to layer initiatives, always striving for that 100%, knowing we'll never get there. Moving on to our secure vestibules and front lobbies. We should never have a point in a school district where someone can just walk off the street and straight into one of our school buildings. We want to make sure that we have an opportunity to stop them at the front and be able to provide some sort of vetting, whether that's visual vetting through an iPhone device, and then allowing them to come into like a secure capture area so that the sight line can be there for the front office staff to make sure that it's not, someone with a custodial issue, somebody wanting to do harm to the school, and we can keep them outside and only allow them in to the school building through secured access. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to make sure that not just any patron off the street has the ability to just walk into a school building at any point in time. We want to make sure that we provide that time and that security to go through the proper vetting procedures before we allow them into our school. Visitor management, this is a huge one for me. When someone comes into your school buildings in Tempe, we want to make sure that we provide proper visitor management. We want to make sure that we can identify who is there. We want to make sure that we run through and we compare them to any kind of offender registry. Newer technology now can allow them to run them against any kind of criminal background as well. Instead of using, a 3-ring binder where you sign in. Anybody can come in and sign into your building, and there's no vetting procedure to say, is John Smith really John Smith? Is that really who he or she says he is? And then at any point in time that someone is or may be on a registry, and you have an incident at your school, then I think you're really going to have more issues than what you want to deal with. So really need to look at a visitor management system. This also can equate to really good accountability if you have any sort of reunification procedure that you need to do during a large-scale incident. So if you had some sort of large-scale incident at one of your schools and you had several visitors check in and you're having to reunify that school off-site, some sort of digital or electronic visitor management can now let us know, hey, I had 12 visitors here. This is who they are, and you can account for them at reunification as well. That way that everybody, including staff and students and any kind of volunteers, everybody is accounted for during that large-scale incident. Camera expansion can really push the school district into a proactive response. There's a lot of technology out there with analytics on cameras now for minimal cost, and these can really push to a proactive state using analytics. There's analytics out there that can, timestamp, facial recognition. You can use it for any kind of intrusion alarm and set geofencing. So if someone's not supposed to be in a certain area during a certain time, it will proactively alarm and let, there's people that you dictate to be on that list, and then you can move in proactive response, notify law enforcement. Someone is there and not show up the next day and realize something's broken, something's missing, something's been vandalized, and then that's that reactive state that we talk about. It also can help us in any kind of missing persons, missing children. The new cameras now with analytics can tell you, there's a white or black male with red sweatpants, green shirt, and it will timestamp whatever date you put in there. It will timestamp every camera they've been to in the order they've been to, and you can track them through campus arrival and dismissal, or arrival time they leave. You can see what kind of car they got in. And it really narrows that time frame down when law enforcement gets there and you're trying to really figure out what happened. Instead of taking 1 or 2 hours to comb through a bunch of video, that's something that can be done in a matter of minutes. Also making sure that we've got dead spots covered, inside the school and outside the school, making sure that that we have, visual on as much of the campus as we possibly can. Access control can really provide a lot of accountability when it comes to who's coming and going on campus. It also allows that convenience that we talked about, sacrificing convenience for security. It really keeps us from propping doors. It really keeps us from having to issue out master keys in a large quantity or a large population at each school, having sets of master keys so that they can enter the building, enter their classroom. At any point in time those keys go missing, then you have to consider where did the master key go? Who has access to the master key now? Was the master key with an ID? And then you have to get into the worries of, does the building need to be rekeyed? What access do they have? With access control, it's extremely easy to limit what doors they can come in, what time frames they can access those doors. And then if any time you have an issue, you can see who was coming and going using those doors. If someone says, hey, I lost my ID card, for access control, it can be quickly shut down, new badge issued. And then also the ease of ingress and egress. So if I'm outside, I have a classroom outside during recess or doing some sort of classroom work, and some sort of indicator makes me want to egress wherever I am and ingress back into the building, Now I'm not fumbling with a key trying to get a door lock. I just quick swipe of my access control badge and I'm into the building. So both camera expansion and access control expansion was recommendations from us. I think that would definitely put Tempe in a lot better proactive response. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys again tonight, and really appreciate you guys wanting to move in the right direction and secure our future. And that will conclude my presentation. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much, Mr. Forrester, for the presentation. I appreciate it. I have just a couple of questions. Do you work with any other school districts here in the Valley or in Arizona?
No, sir, but I hope to.
I like it. Cool. And then can you talk about the cost of your program, both initially and then recurring costs each year?
For the security assessment?
Or for just whatever? I always want to know what things cost.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, my services are just a one-time fee, and then I provide the school district with a 1 full year of free consultation, which just basically provides my service to you. So at any point in time that you guys want to take any of these recommendations that we have provided and start implementing some initiatives, and you're not really sure where to start or how to get there. So I will give you a little bit of background. So in my former life, I was the director of security emergency preparedness for the largest school district in South Carolina. So I was over their security emergency management or emergency preparedness there. And prior to that, I was law enforcement and Secret Service. So I've kind of been around the block and done this. At the school district when I started there, they didn't really have a security department. They really had like a monitoring station that they thought was security. So we really spent about 5 or 6 years kind of building that department out of what security emergency management probably should be. And so I've kind of been around the block, as you would say, when it comes to picking out any kind of technology, cameras, access control, visitor management, weapons detection, and then trying to integrate that together district-wide. So my service was a one-time fee. I came out, did site visits, and then there's 12 free months. So at any point in time that the leadership needs my input or needs another visit, then that's free of charge. I'll fly out and we just kind of together as a partner, just kind of work through those hurdles. If we need to demo some products, we'll do that as well. And then, just depending on what you want, it really depends on what it costs. I know that's not exact, but you can get a camera that's minimal cost, and the more analytics that you add to it, of course, it's going to drive the cost up. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great. Thank you for the answer, sir. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service as well. Thanks.
Mrs.
Absolutely,
Windsor?
no problem.
Thank you very much, President Ewers. I have a couple of questions, but I wanted to first thank you for identifying what I've seen when I've visited campuses, either as a parent or as a board member, that every campus has slightly different protocols, even though they're all supposed to be the same. I've also taught, and I know that often when doors have been propped open, even when I was a teacher, it was usually because of climate control. So this seems like something else that we need to have a conversation about is if teachers and students are, when you're locked in a classroom with 35 kids and they all stink and they're sweaty, like you do what you can to survive. So we do need to have a conversation with facilities because that is a true reality of the situation in the classroom. But I especially appreciate what you said about your other district in South Carolina, that they had a security monitoring system that they thought was security. And I think that that's why we employ people like you to come in and help us assess all of it so that we can actually provide security. And so what my question is, when we have situations where people are uncomfortable, is there any other solution for us other than just managing facilities? Like, is there ways to have the door slightly ajar but still secure? Are there any other alternatives? Because in Arizona, our temperature is just hot. And so if people are hot, they're gonna trying to find solutions. Or they're freezing cold because the AC is blowing so hard that they're trying to balance it out.
Sure. So Yeah, so one thing that we did, or that I say, is there should always be really a one motion secure when it comes to securing a classroom. Okay, so you should be able to do that with one motion. So we had doors in Greenville that were left open, but we had storeroom function locks on those doors. So they stayed locked all the time. So if we went into a lockdown or a secure or whatever the case may be, then they could walk over and with one motion shut the door that was locked. There should be no instances of, like door props, putting wedges in closures, or having to manually manipulate a key from the outside, things of that sort. You want to try to keep it as minimal as possible. Now, I'm also not so naive to understand that things take money and all that good fancy stuff. So my response to your question would be, if there needs to be some give and take on that side, if it comes to HVAC or whatever the case may be, just make sure that you come up with a responsible plan, and that plan is practiced and people understand what they're supposed to do. In that same regard, people who don't do that need to be held accountable for not doing what they were told to do. That's where the accountability comes in. So there is some give and take, and I understand everything can't be perfect across the board. So if there needs to be some manipulations of the plan, that's fine, but have a plan, practice the plan, and that's the plan. There's no deviation from that plan. That would be my response to that particular question.
I appreciate the balanced response, because that's what I was really hoping you would give. Also, I was actually going to have a question for the district administration, was wanting to know if we have looked into devices that scan driver's licenses or other forms of ID. And the reason why I put in other forms of ID is that we know that younger generation of parents often are not getting driver's licenses because they're choosing not to drive. So do we have that capability, or are we investigating that?
Yes, we looked at different systems, and there are systems that have that capability that we could access.
Great, thank you very much.
That was one of my main questions. The other part to second that is for the admin to understand that we're probably going to have to do some retraining of our families, because we are a very inviting small town school system. And so when things are implemented, I think at the forefront, we need to remember the parents and let them know what the new behavior will be, so that they're not sideswiped or they show up 2 minutes earlier than they regularly would to pick up for a dental appointment, things like that, because I can see where that will get all fluffered. My other question was for Dr. Driscoll and Stephen. This, when we did our override, the community came to us, and one of the main things they wanted to see, including this board and including our schools, is that we increased our safety and our services. So I understand that you guys are looking, and those funds, thanks to the community, have been afforded to us. And this is why we're doing this system right now, to start picking and choosing what things are most relevant to do now. Is that right?
Yes, I believe the 2022 bond, when we put out a survey to our community, the biggest issue that they said that they wanted was safety and security. It wasn't building schools, it was to have safe and secure schools. And so that's why we're going down this path, is listening to our community and trying to find out options for us to be smart and intentional, and rather than just going out and buying things and hoping it sticks, to really have a plan. And so that's why we like this, is having this audit to give us a roadmap to, like, here, this is what you should be thinking about. And now we have this. Now let's start saying, hey, what's the dollar amount and what do we prioritize first? It could be visitor management. And if we prioritize that first, then how much is that going to cost, and give that to the board, and then utilize those bond dollars to actually procure those items.
Thank you. And yeah, I did mean bond, not override. And Eric, I can always hear you saying, I got the right one wrong. So It's only my 5th year. I'll keep doing that just to drive you crazy. How about that? The last thing is, when do we plan to start implementing these suggestions? And then how will we train? I think training of our employees, our associates, will be needed quickly.
So, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Driscoll, one of the first things, the first steps that we wanted to make sure, as Dr. Driscoll mentioned, participating in this audit is a great starting point for us. The first thing that they recommended that we do is hire a good director. And so, check, we did that. So, Mr. Carbajal is like a horse at the gate waiting to get started with that. But this was the first step. So, I'll kind of turn it over to him and let him speak to operationally what we're trying to do as far as our next steps. Dr. Driscoll has given some guidance as far as some parameters that we want to adhere to, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, sir. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Driscoll. First, I wanted to thank Travis Forrester and his team as well. They've been nothing but professional the entire time. I've never felt like just a check or an invoice or a job for them. They were very personable throughout. I've spoken to Travis many times, so I wanted to have that on the record just to thank him. And the brief time that I've been with the district, I kind of view this commitment to safety, and I thank you for the commitment to safety as the North Star, if you will, that's what's going to guide us. That's what we're always working for, is that commitment to safety of students, staff, visitors, parents, anybody that visits our sites, right? And now that we have this assessment and we have this information to work with, I kind of view that as the rudder that's going to guide us through this as we navigate. It allows us to adjust course as well as needed, but I think this is going to be really the tangible. It's very proactive to do this, and it does make us a little bit vulnerable, to be honest, right? But I think having this information is really the only place to start. And in my meetings, one of the directions I got from Mr. McGinney was go out, meet people, talk about safety. And I can tell you, in all my interactions, there is a definite thirst for safety, security, protection. And I think that once we can get this ball rolling, and wherever we decide to start, whatever Dr. Driscoll, the board, Mr. McGinney deem as the priority, I think there's not going to be a whole lot of resistance to this movement towards safety. And to your question of training, I said this in one of my interviews, and this is something that my high school Spanish teacher said over and over again, and I still remember to this day: repetition over space intervals for greatest retention. This cannot be something that we create and put on a shelf. It can't be an emergency plan that I think it's over here somewhere. Maybe we keep it in the closet under the fax paper. I don't know. It has to be part of the staff. It has to be part of the site. It's a living, breathing document that needs to be adjusted, needs to be amended as we grow as a district, as we grow at particular sites with staffing and students and enrollment. I think if we just bury this somewhere, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So the creation is going to be a big lift. And I always say, like, how do you eat a dinosaur, right? A bite at a time, and we're going to take this a bite at a time. But again, I think that there's not going to be any resistance. Everybody I've spoken to is like, oh, you're here, now we can do these things that we've. So I think in summary, this is a big first step. So I thank you all for the commitment to this first step. And again, this is going to be what's going to guide us through this process to make sure that our sites are safer and our students are more secure.
And I think to answer your question about timeline, starting we're in the 25-26 school year in less than a week. So starting at those first board meetings, July and August, is coming and saying, okay, based on this recommendation, prioritizing this, here's some options in terms of cost. And having Travis come back and say, hey, this is what we would recommend you start at first would be, and that was one of my big questions for him, is like, okay, you gave us all this, and you talk about cameras and visitor management. Which one would you start with? Because that's how we have to allocate dollars, and depending on the cost, we could say, hey, we can do all this now and do all the visitor management, and then the next year it might be, now we're gonna really update cameras, or at least add cameras in certain spots that we say, hey, we need location, and then start upgrading all our other cameras as well. So I would say starting this upcoming school year, we will have to come to you and say, hey, this is what we want to do, this is the recommendation, and this is the cost, because then you guys have to weigh that and give us direction on, yes, we want you to proceed with that cost.
So, Mr. Forrester, something that I appreciated that you said is that you are and you do advocate for us to work closely with our local police, fire, And then I also wanted to include IT in that and making sure that we are a full, really, really incorporating everybody. Unfortunately, sometimes where our biggest disasters are happening around the country is that the school has an incredible plan and the teachers do an incredible job. And then when law enforcement gets there, they're not able to get in the building. So Steve and I have talked about this before, and he feels very confident that you've been in communication with them. Do you mind giving me giving the board a little update again? Because I know probably more than they know about you, of your expertise and what you've done in the past and how you have a relation already with our city.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So having worked with Tempe Police Department for nearly 28 years, I still do have those connections of people that are working, and I think Travis spoke to a lot of it about badge access. Obviously, during a major incident, a critical event, a lot of things happen to the body physiologically where it comes to lack of dexterity, fine motor skills, and those kinds of things. So I think one of the things that really is important, the badge access, for example, you don't want to be fumbling with keys, right? You don't want to be doing a lot of those things. So a lot of the things that Travis has brought, just so you guys are aware, is already being incorporated into the Conley Curry rebuild. And I've tried to insert some of those things in there because we had that information already. So why go back and retrofit those things when we have the opportunity to fix them or implement them, prior to, right? But I think that, and I think Travis spoke to this as well, we don't want to be figuring out how to handle a critical incident during a critical incident. And I think that has to be practiced, like I spoke to about the repetition, and I think we have to have that practiced out well enough. And another thing that I speak to often is that sometimes people do things until they can't get it, until they get it right. And our hope that we practice things till we can't get it wrong, because under a critical incident type event, we can't get it wrong. And I think that commitment to safety and the repetition and everybody knowing their role is going to be of the critical importance.
Thank you, Mr. Lemon.
Thank you, Madam President. One of the things we did years ago when we started on the rebuild and the refurbishment of our different facilities is we did an audit or an inspection and then had a priority list. Do we have a prioritization of the sites and then what we could do or should be doing at this point?
Yes, so one of the things that Travis said is that he came out to all our sites. For each site, they have a list of things that they would make recommendations for what they observe. So I have a binder in my office that I crack up because I don't like binders, but it's thick and it's every school in our district and even all our district facilities, Sanchez, Bustos, Brogan, and all their recommendations. Some of the recommendations are the same in terms of like, hey, you need to have access, visitor management access. All our district locations, you can just walk in. So they did a really detailed report for every school and pictures and everything. And one of the things they said, and he was being generous and not saying it, is that we have a culture problem. And what he means by that is we have really nice kids. Some of our kids let Travis and his crew onto our campus. They're really nice, but didn't like no badge, just, hey, come on in. And so we have to look at that, and that's where we talk about the training of our staff is that, we have to stop doing things for the convenience and really start to think about like for the safety of our campuses, because that's a lot of times when this stuff happens is that we prop a door open because I don't want to fumble with my keys to get there. And so all this stuff comes with a cost, and that's what my big thing to Travis, like, hey, give me a list of what we should do first, and then we can go and look at vendors and say, okay, this is what we're looking for, this is how much it costs, so we can come back to you and give you real numbers to say, hey, this is what we can do, and then if it comes out cheaper than we thought, we can go on to the next thing on that priority list and start tackling. It might be a multi-year thing where we every year come back and tackle more and more, but just to have a start. And as I told some of the people in this room, now that I'm aware of it, I can't not do anything, because if something happened, they would say, why didn't you? And so we're all on alert now because he just gave this presentation and it's public that we have to do something.
Thank you, Dr. Driscoll. Yeah, my building downtown, in the state building, it's been hardened 2 or 3 different times, and I can't even get my car into the parking lot or out without a badge. And but we prop the gates open in the morning and at dismissal time, And I've been on many campuses where we do the same thing. And people just walk in and out, walk in and out. Do we have a solution for this culture change that we might be looking at? I mean, we're not talking about hardware, we're talking about culture.
Thank you. Mr. Lemon, one of the,
Wait a minute, it's time for my walk.
there you go. One of the first steps that we wanted to make sure that we took to, after we received this information and started, it feels like a gut punch when someone says you have a culture problem because you think we have a great culture, right? But we never think about, because we have places of learning. We don't think about, oh my gosh, our priority should be places of security and learning. And so one of the first steps is really making sure that we have with our safety committee that has been established now is setting that precedence. Well, how are we going to do that? So that's going to be our first step. We've already started that process, and so we're starting that, and then obviously aligning it with this audit and those actionable steps. It's going to have that trickle down, and like Dr. Driscoll said, it's potentially going to take several years before we get there, but this is our starting point. So yes.
I want to thank you all in this room for helping with this, because it's going to take a group effort to continue to make our schools safer. And Mr. Forrester, thank you for coming out and spending the time with us and bringing your expertise. I actually just really wish we didn't have to do this. But it's the time we're in, and I don't want to be like Dr. Driscoll, not on my watch. So thank you for backing us up here. I appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your words. And I just want to reiterate the fact that the leadership and administration has been extremely eager and open-minded to what we had to say. And like Mr. Carbajal said, we've had several conversations about safety and security and culture. And I just want to reiterate the fact that Armored One isn't going anywhere. We're here for a long-standing partnership. And at any point in time that Tempe School District 3 needs us, you just let us know and we'll be there.
Thank you. I know we have a time change, so good night.
Yeah,
Thanks, Travis.
It's about 2 hours past my bedtime.
All right, 8.01, open call to the public. There are no blue cards this evening, so we'll continue to the next agenda item.
Everyone else has left the call.
He's out of here. 9.01, second review and adoption of proposed changes to the governing policy GBK staff grievances. If y'all want to grab that. I'll give you a few minutes to look it over it again. I had to remind myself of some stuff too. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Nothing? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy GBK staff grievances as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. 9.02, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy IJNDB, use of technology resources and instruction.
Madam President,
Mr. Lemon?
Madam President, I have a question. I know there's, seems to be a lot more noise about cell phones in the classroom. And I think there's going to be a Zoom call tomorrow night to talk about what's going on in several of the different districts. Our policy change is not going to prohibit phones. We could adjust, or we could change the policy if we do something about banning cell phones in the classrooms. At least that's my understanding. Is that correct?
Say
Dr.
that
Driscoll?
one more time. One more time, Jeff.
Can you say that one more time?
Go ahead, can you say it one more time?
Oh, yeah. If what we're doing with the amendments to this use of technology resources in instruction, if the students need to have a cell phone to respond to a poll or something like that, that's different than having a cell phone just to talk to their friends or text or whatever it happens to be. And so I see we're probably going down the road here, making changes as we go along with this issue.
Yeah, I want to say state law changed, and they actually, I think it was a House bill that passed, and then in this regulation, that is the update is the language from that House bill. Students would still have cell phones, but it's very limited of what they can actually have it, so they can't just be on there talking to their parent, friends on the phone, texting and stuff like that. They're really, it calls for emergency during an emergency, which when I talked and got guidance on that, that's a very vague term. And there's no like legal definition for that. And so we, in our regulation, would have to spell out what is emergency for us in TD3 would that constitute that a student could use it. And so, but yes, to answer your question, there's no cell phone that banned. This is kind of the state's interpretation of how we would have to incorporate that into our policies.
Thank you. And I see us moving in the direction, just like the previous presentation, we're just hardening what we're doing to improve the ability for the kids to learn and for our employees to teach from that standpoint, but we're not decreasing the ability of these devices, whether they're taking a look at your blood sugar levels or other necessary things for our kids that are medically challenged.
Yep, and I think they even put that in this policy for medical reasons, because we have some students that will have to have their phone, that they could use it. That would be an acceptable reason for them to have the phone.
Thank you.
Mrs. Windsor?
Thank you, President Ewers. In answer also to Mr. Lemon, if you look at under wireless communication devices, it specifically says in blue, districts shall limit use of wireless communications devices during the school day except if, and then A, for educational purposes. That's what your question was about, answering a poll like on a Kahoot or whatever other platform we use now. But what I wanted to say is, speaking of culture problems, one thing that has arisen since COVID is more parent communication to students during the school day than ever before. And I vividly remember getting chastised by parents calling home saying, hey, like, your kid's on the phone all the time, and they're like, yeah, because I need to talk to my kid. So I want to remind the public that if you need to talk to your kid, just like in the 1980s and 90s when we didn't have cell phones, you're able to call the front office, leave a message, and students can be called to the office to actually call you back. And that's totally okay. And if they don't know your phone number, that happens to be in Synergy, so that helps us, so keep that updated for us. And we are more than willing to help communicate emergency situations. Even I've had a call for my own child who does not have a cell phone and say, hey, we've had a change in who's going to pick them up. And the office has always, the staff has been wonderfully supportive. So the communication device isn't an essential because we have other ways to communicate with children. It doesn't have to be smoke signals and it doesn't have to be cell phones. So that's my 2 bits.
Mr. Lemon? Or did you already, I didn't turn off, sorry. Mr. Cherry?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, there are not that many emergencies that a teenager can solve from a classroom. There's just not, and I think it's important that we make sure that we really spell out what the role of parent-student communication is going to be during an emergency, because if that would happen all the time at Carl Hayden. We had a lot of lockdowns and kids would immediately pull out their phones and want to tell their parents what they're doing. And it's like, I appreciate that. I've got kids too, but you're ignoring the only adult who can help you. Mm-hmm. You're ignoring the only adult who matters right now. And I know that, I know we all want to make sure that our kids are safe and everything, but I mean, you're just less safe if you're checking in on them every 2 seconds during an emergency like that. So I think we need to be really deliberate with that language.
And for all those who are going to send us emails, we're all about taking care of our kids. And we want you to be great parents, and we're grateful for you as parents, but we need and must keep our kids safe, and our job is to educate them. So thank you for understanding what a few of us are saying here. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy IJNDB, use of technology resources and instruction.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam
Second.
President?
Oh, yes.
With the regulation, so we can do this, can you guys send me, email me kind of the board meeting that you want to talk so we can bring it back so you guys can have that conversation? So we can get the language good in the regulation for what emergency use is?
Yeah. Yep, thank you. We're like, yes, we can. 9.03, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy JII, student concerns, complaints, and grievances. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed changes to governing board policy JII, student concerns, complaints, and grievances.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. 9.04, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection. Do I have a motion?
Actually, I have a statement first on
Okay.
this one.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Just appreciate that this one actually does spell out to include substitute teachers, since they should be considered mandated reporters as well. And then also for anybody who has never done it, it's actually very easy to do a report, especially online. And it gives you time to think about what you really want to say. So if you're nervous about it, don't be. I was. But once you go through it, it's very straightforward and pretty quick, actually. And they follow up if they have more questions. And I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Oh, no, I got to actually make the motion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Make a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion passes. 9.05, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy JR, student records. Mrs. Windsor?
Just want to let the board know that I verified with Dr. Driscoll that this is an opt-out option. So parents who do not want to have their directory information shared with, like the school that they are moving to, such as high school district, would have to opt out for that. And I'd like to make a motion.
Second?
No, I'm going to make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion.
Stealing your thunder.
It's okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy JR, student records.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Ms. Windsor, I have one more, so I'll get this one right. No, or do we? Yeah, 9.06, discussion, consideration, and possible approval to pay the superintendent his performance-based pay pending satisfactory performance on the superintendent's evaluation. Do I have a motion? Oh, Mrs. Windsor.
Two things. First of all, I appreciated the conversation we had today for evaluation. And I wanted to congratulate you on being the first superintendent that I've had the privilege of having a applause for when we approved your contract. So on that, I'd like to make a motion to approve to pay the superintendent his performance-based pay pending with his satisfactory performance on his evaluation.
Now, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 6 times, 7 time charm. All right, 10.01, student activity report for April 2025. Do we have any questions or comments on this? Moving on. 11, governing board members' points of information. Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. I was out of town for much of the last 2 weeks. It's always difficult for me to hear presentations about school safety. School safety is the most important thing that any of our school staff do, full stop. As educators, we're all very familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the very top of that is self-actualization, being the best person that you can be. And a foundational tier of that is safety. You can't get to where you're learning anything if you're not safe. And so that absolutely has to come first, then teaching French or guitar or whatever it is, all that's a distant second. It's just tough because we always, in this country, we tap dance around safe from what? And we all know what it is. We all know what we're protecting our kids from. It's that we have too much access to guns in this country. And I know that for some reason that's a political statement, but it shouldn't be. There's a lot of sides to that. There are people that want to see reasonable gun control. I don't. I simply want to take your gun away. That's where I am. So just so we're clear on that. I don't like that our front offices have become these places where we demonstrate just how unwelcome you are when you come in until proven otherwise. No, you can't come in until you're buzzed in. You have to get signed in. Let me see your ID. You know, none of there's gates around all the buildings. None of that existed when I was a kid. And I hate that we've gotten to that point. And it's not the time we live in. It's not the world we live in. It's the country we choose to live in. Because in a lot of places, it's just not that way. So to the students, I'm sorry that you all have to wait outside locked doors. I'm sorry that you have to wear an ID all the time. I'm sorry you need a hall pass. To the staff, I'm sorry that you're de facto bodyguards. I really am. To the office staff, I'm very sorry that you're on the front lines for all of this. And to parents, thank you for trusting us. I know it's going to be tough to deal with some of these safety measures that we have to implement, but unfortunately they are important to protect your kids. So I apologize to all of you, and I thank you for your patience.
Mrs. Windsor.
Thank you, President Ewers. I wanted to share that Ms. Ewers has been pushing me to grow a little bit and has invited me to make some connections with some legislators. And I appreciate that she would accompany me to that because I was very nervous to do so. We all have our various strengths and various circles, as we've talked about in the past, our social circles, and that is one that I have not crossed over into before. And so I appreciate you opening that door to help share the message of public education, not just the plight, but the success of public education, and the amazing things that we're doing here in Tempe Elementary. And those conversations help me to take back to the people that tend to listen to me and share the combined message that we have support and that we all are committed to, that a good portion of us are committed to helping children move forward. So that was a really great use of my time this past week. And I neglected to say when I was here at the last meeting, and I apologize for this, that I attended a wonderful career opportunity, I want to say fair, but that's probably not the right word, at Mosley Middle School. Was it a fair? Yeah, okay. And it was phenomenal. And I will say that when I was trying to cross over into another building, because that building is unique in how it locks down, that I had a student who pointed to my badge to have me hold it up, because she was wondering if when I was like locked in between two units and trying to figure out how to get out. And I was like, knock, knock, knock. And I pointed and I held it up for her to check. So just want to say that there are people who are not following a cultural problem. There are children out there who are trying to fix the cultural problem. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Mr. Lemon?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I mean, I'm badged all the time and I can get into a lot of my transportation buildings, and then the work goes on inside. And I think that's the same thing that we're going to approach with our schools when we start hardening the entrance and exits from that standpoint. But I think it's something we need to do. And I agree with Mr. Terry, we have too many weapons out there in the hands of people that don't know what they're doing or what they should be doing. But I did want to make a comment about the LinkedIn messages that I'm seeing, and I think it's great because we're getting 1 or 2 or 3 a week, And I think that's some of the best advertising we can do because it goes to a lot of people. And it's probably better than Facebook, I think, because it goes to the people with school-aged kids. And finally, I just wanted to, you parents that are going to have teenagers approaching, Mr. Terry's exactly right from that standpoint. And so take heed to what he has, his experience from that standpoint with teenagers. Thank you.
I want to bring a point up that Mrs. Windsor just said, so the community understands that we have a really unique board. And the fact that we are giving continuing education sometimes, and we're very conservative with the amount of money that we would spend on the board. But if we don't have that education, there's not been one time when anybody up here hasn't asked, how do I continue to educate myself in something that I don't know? And so we're continually educating ourselves, and I feel like that helps us not be hypocrites of standing up here and just making direction. We too are in the process. So I want to thank this board for continuing to do that too. You've helped me grow over the last 5 years. This is probably the most growth I've ever had as a human being in this position. So when people say, oh my gosh, how do you do it? You don't even get paid. I do get paid, and it's, I've improved my life by doing this, and I've made changes in my life because I am doing this. And I've been able to focus and find out what my mission and what my reason is. And it's because of this. And it's because of you guys supporting me in that. So thank you. I want to thank the community partners for all of their summer programs. I have been invited to plays that we've been going to around the city, and our kids are so good. And so kudos to the kids that are doing things and growing, doing things that they would never do. And thank you to the community for having places for them to do that. It's not just in arts, but it's in sports and it's in soccer. And I was at Kiwanis the other day and seeing what they were doing with all of our kids in the sports programs, and, you know, taking a kid who never bounced a basketball and now they're just shooting free throws. It's awesome. So, yeah, love Tempe, and thank you all for that. Now, 12.01, announcements and upcoming events. Agenda committee will be Wednesday, July 9th at 11 a.m. There will be a board retreat on Wednesday, July 9th at 8 a.m. to noon. The new staff orientation kickoff will be Tuesday, July 15th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. at McCamey Academy of International Studies, 2250 South College Avenue, Tempe 85282. The next regularly scheduled governing board meeting will take place on Wednesday, July 16th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Karen Arredondo Governing Boardroom of the Sanchez Administration Building, 3205 South Roll Road, Tempe 85282. The Back to School rally will be Friday, July 18th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. at Gammage Auditorium, 1200 South Forest Avenue, Tempe 85281. And the first day of school is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. And everybody's just going, oh my. But that's exciting. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's, oh, no, Mr. McGinney.
Thank you, Madam President. Some of you may have noticed that there's a plant at my table. Ms. Windsor and Mr. Miller, when did you get here? Okay. Heather, this one is for you. So I wanted to just take a quick moment, on behalf of the governing board, the district, and just show gratitude for your many years of service as executive coordinator, as an executive administrative assistant, for all the lives that you've positively impacted in both of those roles. And so wanted to give a small token, well, I would say a small token, but a token of gratitude for all that you've accomplished on behalf of everyone, Dr. Driscoll, our governing board. So thank you for everything.
Now, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Geez, y'all want to stay? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Have a good night and great summertime.